Listen up, because what I'm about to tell you might be the most important thing you hear all year. And I'm not talking about some get-rich-quick scheme or another crypto hype train. I'm talking about a financial revolution that's happening right under our noses. And most people are completely blind to it. My name is your name, and I've been deep in the digital asset space for years now. I've watched Bitcoin go from pennies to tens of thousands. I've seen Ethereum transform from a white paper to a $1 trillion ecosystem. But what's happening with XRP right now? This is different, this is bigger, and frankly, it's got me both excited and terrified. You see, while everyone's been arguing about whether crypto is a scam or the future of money, the real players, the banks, the institutions, the people who actually move trillions of dollars around the world every single day, they've been quietly positioning themselves for something massive, something that could make early Bitcoin investors look like they were playing with pocket change. Let me paint you a picture. It's Monday evening, and I'm sitting here thinking about how Mondays used to be the worst day of the week for me. You know that feeling, right? Sunday night anxiety, dreading the alarm clock, counting down the hours until Friday. But something shifted when I started paying attention to what's really happening in the financial world. Because here's the thing, while most people are living for the weekend, building someone else's dream, there's a small group of us who've recognized that we're living through the biggest wealth transfer in human history. And it's not happening on Wall Street, it's happening in digital assets. Specifically, it's happening in XRP. Now I know what you're thinking. Another crypto influencer telling me to buy the dip. But hear me out, because what I'm about to share with you isn't financial advice, it's a wake-up call. Just tonight, someone brought up something called the Canton Network in our discussion, and honestly, I had never heard of it before. But when I started digging, and I mean really digging, what I found made my blood run cold. This isn't some random blockchain project launched by a couple of guys in a garage. This is a public blockchain developed specifically for financial institutions. We're talking Goldman Sachs, BNY Mellon, major banks and exchanges. They launched this thing in 2023, and it's governed by an independent nonprofit body established just last year. Here's what's scary about this. While retail investors have been fighting over meme coins and trying to time the market, these institutions have been building the infrastructure for a completely new financial system. The Canton Network enables something called atomic transactions. Imagine being able to trade assets with complete strangers without any counterparty risk. No more you send first or I'll send after you send. The blockchain holds everything in escrow and executes the trade atomically, meaning it either happens completely or not at all. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't competing with Ripple. This is complementary to what Ripple is doing. Ripple handles settlement and trading of financial transactions. The Canton Network is like a layer on top of that, enabling interoperability between multiple institutions without counterparty risk. Do you understand what this means? These institutions aren't just experimenting with blockchain technology anymore. They're building the rails for the new financial system. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to be left behind. Earlier tonight, someone asked me a question that I get all the time. If I have 1,000 XRP, what will that look like in the next year or two? Let me be brutally honest with you. 1,000 XRP could be worth $1 million within the next 2 years. And I'm not saying that to get you excited or to pump my bags. I'm saying that because when I look at all the pieces moving into place, the regulatory clarity, the institutional adoption, the infrastructure being built, it's not a matter of if XRP hits 4 digits, it's a matter of when. But here's what's going to shock you. $1 million isn't what it used to be. I know that sounds insane, especially if you're working paycheck to paycheck. But let me explain. Back in the 1990s, if you had $1 million, you were set for life. Today, there are new millionaires created every single day in the United States. And it's not because people are getting smarter or working harder. It's because they've printed so much money that $1 million just doesn't have the same purchasing power. If you tried to retire on $1 million today and you're younger than 70, you'll probably outlive that money. At 5% return, that's $50,000 a year. In most places, that barely covers your basics. You need $10 million to have real financial freedom, what people call FU money. That's when you can make $500,000 a year without touching the principal and live anywhere in the world. But here's the thing that gets me fired up. We're not just talking about making money here. We're talking about getting back your time. Most people wake up and immediately start running. Kids, spouse, job, bills, responsibilities. And when they're not doing that, they're decompressing by scrolling through TikTok or watching TV. How many people do you know who actually guard their time and give themselves space to think, to reflect on their life, their purpose, what they really want? The wealthiest, most successful people I know all have one thing in common. They spend time alone in solitude, thinking about their life, their goals, their mission. I get up at 4 a.m. most mornings, not because I have to, but because that's when the world is quiet. No texts, minimal emails, just me and my thoughts. Sometimes I'm on the treadmill listening to audiobooks. Sometimes I'm just walking and thinking. It's during these quiet moments that I've had some of my biggest realizations. And recently, I've been thinking a lot about what I call the perfect storm that's building in the financial markets. We're looking at a scenario where everything that needs to happen for XRP to reach 4 digits could actually happen this year. I'm talking about regulatory clarity, institutional adoption, the tokenization of derivatives markets, central bank digital currencies, and the reverse carry trade unwinding. Let me explain that last one because it's happening right now. For 25 years, investors have been borrowing money in Japanese yen at near zero interest rates and investing it in higher yielding assets around the world. It's called the carry trade, and it's been one of the biggest trades in global finance. But now, the Bank of Japan is raising interest rates while the Federal Reserve is lowering them. The UK is changing rates. All the major central banks are shifting policy this week. This carry trade is about to unwind, and when it does, we're going to see massive volatility across all markets. And you know what tends to perform well during times of financial uncertainty and currency devaluation? Digital assets that can't be printed by central banks. Here's something that might be hard to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway because I respect you enough to tell you the truth. Most people are not going to make life-changing money from XRP. Not because XRP won't go up, I believe it will go up dramatically, but because most people don't have the discipline to hold through the volatility, they'll sell at $5 or $10 or $50, thinking they've won the lottery. They'll take profits and buy a new car or pay off some debt, and they'll miss the real wealth creation. The people who are going to become truly wealthy from this are the ones who understand that we're not just in a bull market. We're in the early stages of a complete monetary system change. They're the ones who will hold through $100, through $500, through $1,000, because they understand that XRP isn't just another cryptocurrency. XRP is the bridge currency for the new global financial system. It's what banks will use to settle transactions instantly and cheaply across borders. It's what will power the tokenization of real-world assets. It's the rails that the Canton networks of the world will run on. But here's what really keeps me up at night. What if I'm wrong about the timeline? I've got a public bet worth about $20,000 today that XRP will hit $750 by the end of this year. If I'm right, that bet will be worth about $3.5 million. I didn't make this bet to show off or to pump XRP. I made it because I wanted to put my money where my mouth is and help some people get their XRP back from someone who had taken advantage of them. But what if it takes longer? What if instead of 2025, we're looking at 2026 or 2027 for 4-digit XRP? Does that change anything? For me, it doesn't. Because I'm not just betting on a price target, I'm betting on the future of money itself. Let me share with you a vision that might sound crazy, but hear me out. What if in 5 years, your 1,000 XRP is worth not just $10,000 per coin, but $20,000 or $30,000 or $50,000? That's 20 million, 30 million, 50 million from a $3,000 investment today. Where else are you going to get that kind of return? You could start a business, but that requires massive amounts of work, sacrifice, and there's no guarantee. You could try to get in on the next PayPal or Facebook, but how do you even find those opportunities, and how do you get in early enough to matter? The beautiful thing about XRP is that you don't have to be an accredited investor. You don't need connections to Silicon Valley. You don't need to understand complex derivatives or private equity structures. You just need to buy it and hold it. But, and this is a big but, you have to be able to delay gratification. You have to be willing to not touch it, not sell it, not even think about it for 5 years. You have to be comfortable with the possibility that it could go to zero, even though I believe that's extremely unlikely. This sounds horrible to say, but you could literally go into a coma for 5 years and wake up extremely wealthy if you can just hold your XRP and be patient. Let me get technical for a moment, because what's happening this week could be the catalyst that kicks everything off. For the past 25 years, global investors have been borrowing money in Japanese yen at virtually zero interest rates and investing that money in higher yielding assets around the world. This is called the carry trade, and it's been one of the most profitable trades in global finance. But here's the problem. When you borrow in one currency and invest in another, you're exposed to currency risk. If the yen strengthens against the currency you're invested in, you could lose money even if your investments go up. And right now, the Bank of Japan is raising interest rates, while the Federal Reserve and other major central banks are lowering theirs. This is causing the yen to strengthen, which means all those carry trade positions are under pressure. When these positions start to unwind, and they will, we're going to see massive volatility across all asset classes. Stocks, bonds, commodities, currencies, everything is going to be affected. But digital assets like XRP, they could benefit enormously from this chaos. Because when traditional financial systems start breaking down, people look for alternatives. And XRP isn't just an alternative. It's a better system entirely. While everyone's been focused on price predictions and technical analysis, the real story has been the infrastructure being built around XRP. The Canton network is just one example, but there are dozens of others. Central banks around the world are developing digital currencies, and they need a way to make them interoperable. Financial institutions are tokenizing real-world assets, and they need a reliable, fast, cheap way to trade them. Governments are looking for ways to track and control money flows without stifling innovation. XRP is the solution to all of these problems. It's not just a cryptocurrency, it's the plumbing for the new financial system. And the beautiful thing is that most retail investors have no idea this is happening. They're still arguing about Bitcoin versus Ethereum, or trying to find the next meme coin that will 100x overnight. Meanwhile, the smartest money in the world is quietly accumulating XRP and building the infrastructure to support it. Here's something that might make you uncomfortable. I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. Maybe too much time. I read everything I can get my hands on. I talk to people in the industry. I analyze charts and fundamentals and macro trends. And even with all that research, I could be completely wrong about the timing. XRP could take another year to really break out, or it could happen next month. Markets are unpredictable, and anyone who tells you they know exactly when something is going to happen is either lying or delusional. But here's what I do know. The infrastructure is being built. The regulations are being clarified. The institutions are getting involved. The use cases are being developed. All the pieces are moving into place. Whether it happens in 2025, 2026, or 2027, I believe we're going to see XRP reach price levels that most people think are impossible. And the people who are positioned for that are going to benefit enormously. I mentioned earlier that we have almost 7,200 people in our mastermind community. These aren't just random crypto enthusiasts. These are serious investors who understand that we're living through a historic wealth transfer opportunity. Every Monday, we break down what's happening in the digital asset markets. We analyze the macro trends, the regulatory developments, the technical indicators, everything that could affect your portfolio. We share research, insights, strategies that you won't find anywhere else. And it's not just about making money, it's about understanding the bigger picture. It's about positioning yourself for the future of finance. It's about connecting with other people who see what you see and are preparing for what's coming. Because here's the thing, this journey can be lonely. Most people think we're crazy for believing in digital assets. They think we're delusional for talking about 4- and 5-digit XRP prices. They don't understand the technology. They don't see the infrastructure being built. They don't recognize the historical significance of what we're living through. But in our community, you're not alone. You're surrounded by people who get it, who share your vision, who can help you stay focused when the markets get volatile and the doubters get loud. Let me share something personal with you. This journey has cost me relationships. I've had friends and family members think I've lost my mind. I've been called everything from a dreamer to a fool to a cult member, and I get it. From the outside, it probably does look crazy. Talking about XRP going to thousands of dollars per coin sounds insane if you don't understand the fundamentals. Believing that we're witnessing the birth of a new financial system sounds like science fiction if you haven't done the research. But being early to major paradigm shifts is always lonely. The people who bought Amazon stock in 1997 were called crazy. The people who invested in Apple in 2003 were told they were throwing their money away. The people who bought Bitcoin at $100 were laughed at. Every major wealth creation opportunity in history has looked ridiculous to the masses right up until it didn't. And that's where we are with XRP right now. We're at that point where it still looks crazy to most people, but the smart money is starting to pay attention. The infrastructure is being built, the partnerships are being announced, the regulatory clarity is coming. We're not early anymore. We're right on time. Let's talk numbers for a moment, because I want to be completely transparent with you about what 4-digit XRP really means. If XRP hits $1,000, which I believe is not just possible but likely within the next 2 years, the total market cap would be around $100 trillion. That's bigger than the entire global stock market today. Does that sound impossible? It shouldn't, because we're not just talking about XRP as a speculative asset. We're talking about XRP as the settlement layer for the global financial system. We're talking about trillions of dollars in daily transactions flowing through the XRP ledger. The derivatives market alone is worth over $1 quadrillion. If even a small percentage of that gets tokenized and settles on XRP, we're looking at massive demand for the token. And here's the thing that most people don't understand. When XRP is being used for settlement, it's not being held for speculation. It's being bought, used, and potentially burned in microseconds. The velocity is so high that the circulating supply available for investment could be much smaller than people think. This is why I'm comfortable making bold predictions about XRP's price potential. I'm not just looking at it as another crypto token. I'm looking at it as the oil of the new financial system. I want to take a step back and talk about something bigger than just XRP prices. I want to talk about generational wealth. Most of us weren't born into wealthy families. We didn't inherit trust funds or family businesses. We didn't have access to exclusive investment opportunities or insider connections. We started from zero, maybe even from negative if you count student loans and credit card debt. But digital assets have democratized wealth creation in a way that's never existed before. For the first time in history, a regular person with a few $1,000s can get access to the same investment opportunities as billionaires and sovereign wealth funds. You can buy XRP today at the same price as Goldman Sachs. You can hold it in the same wallets as central banks. You can benefit from the same network effects as Fortune 500 companies. This is unprecedented, and it's not going to last forever. As the institutional adoption increases, as the regulatory frameworks solidify, as the infrastructure matures, the opportunities for massive returns are going to decrease. The people getting rich from Apple stock today aren't making the same returns as the people who bought in the 1980s and 1990s. We're living in the early days of the digital asset revolution. This is our internet moment, our railroad moment, our oil discovery moment, and XRP is positioned to be the standard for global financial settlement. But here's what I've learned over the years. Making money is the easy part. The hard part is keeping it and growing it and using it wisely. I've seen people make fortunes in crypto only to lose it all on the next trade. I've seen people get rich and then get lazy thinking the money will last forever. I've seen people achieve financial freedom and then realize they have no idea what they actually want to do with their lives. That's why I started this whole thing talking about purpose and alignment and spending time in solitude, thinking about what you really want. Because on the other side of this XRP price appreciation, and I believe it's coming, you're going to have decisions to make. You're going to have opportunities and responsibilities that you've never had before. You're going to have the freedom to choose how you spend your time and energy. And if you haven't thought about what that looks like, if you haven't prepared mentally and emotionally for that transition, you could end up worse off than when you started. I've met plenty of wealthy people who are miserable. I've met plenty of successful people who are empty inside. Money solves money problems, but it doesn't solve life problems. That's why I hope that everyone who benefits from this XRP opportunity uses it as a launching pad to figure out their real purpose, their true calling, what they were put here to do beyond just making money. One thing that excites me about the XRP community is the quality of people who are drawn to it. These aren't get-rich-quick speculators or meme coin degenerates. These are serious investors who have done their research and understand the fundamentals. When XRP does reach those 4- and 5-digit prices, there's going to be a network of incredibly wealthy, intelligent, mission-driven people around the world. And that network is going to be more valuable than the money itself. Think about what happens when you have thousands of newly wealthy XRP holders who are passionate about financial freedom, technological innovation, and global adoption. Think about the businesses that will be started, the problems that will be solved, the impact that will be made. This isn't just about individual wealth creation. This is about funding the next generation of world-changing innovations. And if you're part of this community, if you're holding XRP and you're thinking about how to use that wealth responsibly, you're going to be connected to some of the most interesting and capable people on the planet. That's a network effect that you can't put a price on. One of the biggest catalysts I'm watching for is regulatory clarity around XRP. For years, the lawsuit with the SEC created uncertainty that kept many institutional investors on the sidelines. But now that we have clarity that XRP itself is not a security, the floodgates are starting to open. We're seeing increased institutional adoption, exchange listings, and regulatory approval in jurisdictions around the world. This isn't just about the United States. This is global. Countries like Japan, Singapore, the UK, and others are embracing XRP and creating frameworks for its use in their financial systems. And as more institutions get comfortable with the regulatory environment, we're going to see massive capital flows into XRP. We're talking about pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, central banks, and other multi-trillion-dollar entities that have been waiting on the sidelines. When that capital starts flowing, the price movements we've seen so far are going to look like warm-up acts. Let me get a bit technical for a moment, because understanding the infrastructure is crucial to understanding why XRP is positioned for massive growth. The XRP ledger can process 1/500 transactions per second with settlement times of 3 to 5 seconds and transaction costs of fractions of a penny. Compare that to Bitcoin's 7 transactions per second or Ethereum's 15 transactions per second, and you can see why institutions are choosing XRP for real-world applications. But it's not just about speed and cost. It's about the ecosystem that's being built around XRP. We're seeing the development of automated market makers, decentralized exchanges, lending protocols, and other DeFi applications that are native to the XRP ledger. This is creating a complete financial ecosystem where XRP isn't just a settlement token, it's the gas that powers an entire decentralized financial system. And as more applications get built, as more users join the network, as more institutions integrate XRP into their operations, the demand for the token continues to increase while the available supply for speculation continues to decrease. Here's something that most XRP holders don't fully understand. Every transaction on the XRP ledger destroys a small amount of XRP. It's called the transaction fee. And while it's tiny, just 0.00001 XRP per transaction, it adds up over time. With current transaction volumes, we're destroying millions of XRP per year. But as adoption increases, as institutions start using XRP for settlement, as the network processes trillions of dollars in daily volume, we could be destroying hundreds of millions or even billions of XRP annually. This is a deflationary mechanism that's built into the protocol. As usage increases, supply decreases. It's basic economics. When demand goes up and supply goes down, price goes up. And unlike Bitcoin's halving, which happens every 4 years, XRP's deflation is continuous and proportional to network usage. The more successful XRP becomes, the more XRP gets destroyed, the more scarce the remaining supply becomes. Most people are focused on the current supply of 100 billion XRP, but they're not thinking about what the supply will look like in 5 or 10 years if XRP becomes the global settlement standard. The derivatives market is worth over $1 quadrillion globally. That's $1,000 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's more than 10 times the size of global GDP. Right now, most of these derivatives are settled through traditional clearinghouses using traditional currencies. But there's a massive push to tokenize these assets and settle them on blockchain networks. And guess which blockchain network is best suited for high volume, low cost, fast settlement of tokenized derivatives? That's right, the XRP ledger. If even 1% of the derivatives market moves to blockchain settlement using XRP, we're talking about 10 trillion in annual volume. If 5% moves, that's 50 trillion. If 10% moves, that's 100 trillion. At those volumes, with the velocity of settlement transactions, the demand for XRP would be astronomical. And remember, this XRP isn't being held for speculation, it's being used and potentially destroyed in the settlement process. This is why I'm comfortable talking about 4- and 5-digit XRP prices. I'm not just looking at retail speculation. I'm looking at institutional usage that dwarfs anything we've seen in crypto so far. Central bank digital currencies are coming whether we like it or not. The Federal Reserve is exploring a digital dollar. The European Central Bank is working on a digital euro. China already has a digital yuan, and dozens of other countries are developing their own CBDCs. But here's the problem. How do you make all these different digital currencies interoperable? How does a digital dollar transact with a digital euro or a digital yen? The answer is a bridge currency that can facilitate instant, low-cost settlement between any two CBDCs. And XRP is perfectly positioned to be that bridge currency. In fact, Ripple has already been working with central banks around the world on CBDC pilots and implementations. They're not just preparing for this future, they're helping to build it. When CBDCs launch globally and they need interoperability, XRP is going to be right there as the solution. And the transaction volumes from CBDC settlement could dwarf everything we've talked about so far. Let me be specific about what I think the timeline looks like for this wealth transfer. 2025, I believe we'll see XRP break through 10, possibly reaching $100 or higher as institutional adoption accelerates and regulatory clarity solidifies. 2026, 4-digit XRP becomes reality as derivatives tokenization begins and CBDC interoperability requirements create massive demand. 2027 to 2028, 5-digit XRP as the system fully matures and XRP becomes the undisputed global settlement standard. Now, could I be wrong about the timeline? Absolutely. Could it happen faster? Yes. Could it take longer? Also yes. But what I'm confident about is the direction. The infrastructure is being built, the partnerships are being formed, the regulations are being clarified, and the use cases are being developed. This isn't speculation. This is preparation for an inevitable transition to a new financial system. As we wrap up, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind a lot lately. What are you going to do with this wealth when it comes? Because if I'm right, if XRP does what I think it's going to do, there are going to be a lot of newly wealthy people in the world. People who started with a few $1,000s and ended up with millions or tens of millions. And with that wealth comes responsibility, not just to yourself and your family, but to the world around you. I hope that the people who benefit from this XRP opportunity use that wealth to solve problems, to create value, to make the world a better place. I hope they start businesses that employ people, fund research that cures diseases, support causes that help the less fortunate. Because ultimately, money is just a tool. It's what you do with that tool that determines whether your wealth creation was a blessing or a curse. If you've made it this far in this discussion, you're clearly someone who's thinking seriously about the future of money and your place in it. You're not just looking for a quick profit, you're looking for a way to create lasting wealth and freedom for yourself and your family. That's exactly the kind of person who's positioned to benefit most from what's coming. But I want to leave you with this thought. Time is the one thing you can't create more of. Every day you wait to position yourself for this opportunity is a day you can't get back. I'm not saying you should bet everything on XRP or take risks you can't afford. I'm saying you should take this seriously, do your own research, and make informed decisions based on facts rather than emotions. Because when this thing really starts moving, when 4-digit XRP becomes reality, when the derivatives market gets tokenized, when CBDCs launch globally, it's going to happen fast. And the people who are prepared are going to benefit enormously. The people who aren't are going to watch from the sidelines and wonder, what could have been? The choice is yours. The information is available. The opportunity is in front of you. What are you going to do about it? The winds of change are blowing. The question is, are you ready to ride them, or are you going to let them pass you by? This has been your wake-up call. The rest is up to you. Remember, this isn't financial advice. This is a perspective on what might be the biggest wealth transfer opportunity of our lifetimes. Do your own research, make your own decisions, and never invest more than you can afford to lose. But also remember, the biggest risk might not be what you could lose by investing. The biggest risk might be what you could miss by not investing. Think about it, research it, and then decide what's right for you and your future. The revolution is coming. The only question is whether you'll be part of it or watching it from the outside. Make your choice wisely. Time is running out.